Welcome to FM Jeeping. My name is Mark, and today we're going to be doing part 2 of the comp cut series, and we're going to turn that big gaping hole we created in part 1 into this. So now that I got the tub cut, now I want to go ahead and do my prep work. I put a piece of tape here so I can get the exact length I need. I'm going to go ahead and measure that piece of tape. I don't have a cloth tape measure on me right now, but the tape will do. It's disposable anyway. After that, I'm going to go ahead, prep all the surface. I'm going to take a flap disc or a wire wheel, clean up the edge of this so I have something to tack to. All these parts up here, I'm going to go ahead and clean up. That way, when I lay my foundation or that spine, the long strip from the front to the back, I have something nice clean metal to tack to. So now that I got this piece roughed up, I hand bent it. I'm going to line the bottom piece up with the lower part of this quarter. This is the part that sticks out the furthest on the whole panel, so I'm going to use that as a gauge. Now I'm going to have a little bit of stick out, probably about an inch or so up through this area, which is fine. I can cut that off and grind it flush later. But what I want to do is get in there with some clamps, my welder, tack, clamp, tack, clamp, tack, clamp, and I might need a hammer to kind of massage stuff in place. But that's fine, that's normal, and you just want this panel to be as square as possible because basically everything that you're going to build from here on in is going off this panel. So this is kind of like your foundation, we'll call it. Now that I have the foundation in the wheel well, that's this piece right here that kind of outlines the curvature and the design of the wheel well. I'm going to go ahead and start making the ribbon pieces or the inner tubes, or the inner tubs, sorry. I'm going to do something like I did on this side. I'm going to do a 5-inch piece here to basically set the standard curvature. And I'm going to build everything off that. So like I did on this side, I made my foundation, I made this piece, the much bigger piece, which covers probably about 60% of the tub. Then I made this bottom piece here, which then set my curvature for this corner. So I did this piece back here, this, and then I ultimately finished with the transition from the factory to my new tub. And that's basically the same outline I'm going to do on the passenger side. I could essentially make one piece because now I have the measurements, whereas before I didn't. I could try to do it all in one shot, but to be honest, I feel a little bit better, messing up a small 5-inch piece than we'll call it an 18-inch piece. So I also like having that 5-inch piece so I can manipulate it a little bit easier, get it set perfect, and then build off that. It's a lot easier to handle, a lot easier to bend, and a lot easier to get straight and line everything up. So that's where I'm going to start with. So I'll do the 5-inch piece here, and then I'm going to do the bigger piece here. And then once I get to this corner, that's when things get a little bit more intricate, and you got to get a little funky with the bends. So let's get to that point. got it tacked in, I like the shape. I did have to massage this lip a little bit to get it to match very closely to the distance between the bottom of this to the top of this. I believe I'm about 2 1/4 there, just a little over 2 1/4 here. So that's okay. I did massage it up with a dead blow. Leveled it out a little bit because the truck is not sitting perfectly flat, so you know. But this is a custom application. It wasn't gonna go right, wasn't gonna go 100% first off the go. So with that being said, I got this all set. I'm gonna go ahead and make my big panel that comes to about here. So I'm gonna mimic, take some measurements off the panel I already have and put it here. Now, when I had started this, I tried to do as many straight cuts as possible because curved cuts require a lot more fitting. That's why there's a lot more smaller pieces on this side, because this is the curvature. This is where it kind of cones around and cones up. So I needed to do as many flat cuts as possible. So now I'm going to mirror that over on this side, and we'll try to rough it up as close as we can. So that's next. 15 3/4 inches. Alright, so this definitely isn't coming out nearly as clean as the other side, but it's gonna do. I mean, it looks okay. Trying to keep as close as possible. So now what I need to do is connect this inner piece to here. But I got all this junk in the way. I gotta clean this out, cut that out. So let me cut this out and I'll be right back. Alright, got my panel cut out. I'm going to try to mirror this curvature just a little bit. Not bad. Not bad. And granted, I got to get this. I have to get this curved a little bit more. A little bit less. A little bit more. It's pretty close. I gotta bend. I might just cut. You know what? That's what I'll probably do. I'll probably cut this side here to match this curvature here. All right, so I got this panel roughed up. I bend and twist a little bit. Still not 100% perfect, but it's close enough where I can start possibly tacking it in and making my fine-tune adjustments, which overall, not bad. I'm a little happy with it. I'm pretty happy with it. So we'll go from there. So this is part of the project where it's kind of like try, trim, and then dialing it in. Now this is part of where I have probably the most difficulty because I'm not the most detail-oriented guy, as my wife might tell you. But it'll do. It'll do. At this point, I'm going to go ahead, tack this panel into place to the existing panel, and then go around the inside of the fender well and fine-tune the fitment on the inside. Okay, so now I'm going to do a smaller piece. I think it's like 2.5 inch, 2.5 inch from here to here, because as it gets bigger, and 2.5 might even be too big. If you don't feel comfortable trying to bend, go smaller. It just means you're going to have to weld more, which, you know, at the end of the day is a pain in the ass, and you're doing more welding. I got to push that side in, but I'm going to do like a 2.5 inch ribbon here. And then I'm going to do one up here. Alright, so I cut too much, but that's not the worst of it. I can most likely patch that. Not the biggest deal in the world, but all in all, I do like the fit, minus the fact that I cut just a little too much off. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill that with weld. Not the right way to do it, but there's worse things. Alright, now I just got to clamp this back together, and it'll be perfectly flush. Now I got this panel done, and I fixed my little oopsie there. I'm going to run a strip down here because this is a pretty straight shot, and this is only going to be about 2 inches wide, and I'm going to come down here, and as I get this part smaller, the panels are going to get smaller, and then the very end I'm going to try a technique of shaping, because there's no way I'm going to be able to get a good round corner. Now on this side here, if you look, all the dimples here, I actually did some metal shaping, and I'll get to that a little later on. Alexa, play 80s rock. I got this panel installed. Now on my other side, I did one more panel, one more ribbon, like this way, and then I did a fitted, hammered metal shaping that I did. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and try to do this in one piece. Now, I've tried to do bigger panels and failed miserably. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, this isn't terrible. I think I could do better, but the bigger panels seem to be a little bit harder for me, so trying to stay somewhat in my comfort zone, I'm going to go ahead and go with a little bit smaller panel, because the curves might be a little bit more extreme, but I don't have to work as much metal, which which is always a bonus. So it's gonna be hot because I just welded. Trying to get all the ripples out of it. So all these folds and whatnot is basically metal that I'm going to have to displace when I form it. So let's try this now. Okay. I'll transpose this onto metal. So I roll up. So this should be facing up, but I need to have it curve up. So I'm going to turn when I roll up, down. Oops. Okay. Just like that. And then just whack away. And yes, I did just say that. See already, I've got curvature on all the planes. So actually, take a look. This one actually fits first try. Nope, but not bad, and way better than I did last time. So I'm going to continue to hit in the middle on the underside and see what I come up with. Even a little closer. I gotta round this out just a little bit more, and I gotta really hit a little bit more up. Not all the way on the top, but basically like right here, so I start the bend. Getting closer and closer every round. Now, if you see, it is overshot, and with that, the reason being is because when you expand it out, it'll suck up the slack and hopefully fit pretty darn well. So I got to keep hitting this out and giving this more of a contour. So more and more hammering. I got the contour I was looking for. Now I just got to line everything up, and I just need to figure out where I need to trim. A little bit down here on this plane here. All right, I think I'm going to take off this lip here. That'll do. I think that'll do. Yep. So now I have to tie in my new tub to the existing factory tub. Now there's a hole right here which is exposed to the outside. So what I'm going to do is cut, actually I'm going to leave this here, and I'm going to cut a piece out here, probably about 2 inches down, and about all the way down to where it gets straight again. Because what I want to do is basically make a conversion ribbon or some type of transition that's angled down and it has a slight bend, but will meet the factory tub. Very similar to that one. Excuse the welds, I gotta clean that up. But that's the type of transition I'm looking for. That, you know, isn't the prettiest thing in the world, but it is going to serve the purpose for keeping water and dirt, for the most part, out of the rig. So we're gonna get started by cutting this little ribbon out, and I'm gonna fabricate a piece that'll do the transition from the new tub to the old tub. So now I got the transition attacked to the bottom here and this pinch here. I'm gonna go ahead and try to blend the factory to the transition. So it's gonna be a tight fit. So what I'm gonna do is go underneath in the wheel well, push up on this, try to get this to meet this, and throw some tacks across. This is a slightly bigger gap, so it's gonna be a little difficult, but I'm just gonna use a handle on a hammer and try to get it so that they're level. So at this point, I'm gonna go in and start doing 1 and 2 inch sections, just constantly laying little tacks. Now that factory sheet metal is much thinner than the stuff I'm using, so if you go too hot, you'll punch right through. So you wanna start on the thicker stuff and just tack, 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 whip, whip, whip. These are not that great, but this is kind of the idea. And you want to do it in small sections. You want to kind of space it out or hit it with a hammer, tap it with a hammer, just to kind of dispense the heat. If you see right here, on the thicker stuff, I was able to drag, but I did a quick drag, and it actually punched all the way through, which is good in terms of the weld. However, you will not be able to do that on the factory stuff. The welder is just too hot. This stuff is too thin. And I would suggest laying like nice clean tacks. You want to get the wire as hot as you can before you punch through. At least that's what I've noticed. Then that way there's a lot less cleanup on the other side, because basically the weld fills the gap. One thing that I've definitely noticed is there's 2 schools of thought. One, you leave a gap, and you might have seen me use this. These are butt weld clamps, and this gives it a gap of, if you look at the thickness of this piece of metal right here, that gives the thickness. Some people think that's perfect. Other people like to butt it up 100% and try to get as small a gap as possible. I can tell you, at least with this project, I am under the opinion that this gap is almost near perfect, because it's about the same width as the wire, and it'll fill the gap nicely. I've seen it where if I weld with that gap, I hit it on one side, I go to the back side just to kind of check to see if it penetrated, and it does, and it fills the weld nicely to the point where all I need is a light grit sandpaper, and it's almost grinds like fully smooth. So that's just personal preference, that's for me, so keep that in mind. I'm gonna go ahead and finish weld everything, and I'll catch you guys up here in a minute. So I've ground out some of the finished, I've went back, finished welded, well, most of it. I gotta get this piece up here. It's gonna give me a little bit of trouble. But I'm gonna go back, grind this down, hit it with a flat disc, kind of smooth it out the best I can. I'm ultimately gonna end up texturing underneath here anyway, very similar to this. So it's gonna hide a lot of this, especially as long as I can get it relatively flat. So due to technical difficulties, basically my camera running out of battery and not knowing it, is that here is the finished product on the quarter panel. Now, what I ultimately did was I cut at an angle, if you can imagine, like this, and then I ground down what was left. Now, I didn't cut right to this panel. I cut just a little bit off, and then I sanded it down nice and easy to meet the actual factory quarter. Now, I did go thin in a couple spots. You can probably see a little bit here. But I'm gonna put a armor over this. But if you're really, really hard up and want this to be perfect, you can always go back, fill it in, sand it down, and kind of work on all the low spots. I have a couple of them. I have like one here, and then ultimately right here. So, but that's kind of my deal. I'm gonna put armor over this anyway. I painted this to keep it from rusting, so we should be good. So please suspend belief and pretend that I don't have tape and tools all in the cargo bay. Now basically all I have really left to do back here is seam seal and paint. So now that everything's finished welded, I went back and reground everything, and this is ultimately the end result. Now I'm overall pretty happy with it. I think I definitely could have done some things a little bit smoother, but for the grand scheme of things, this rig is definitely not a show rig. This is more function over form, and for form-wise, I think it's okay. I seam sealed, which I wasn't going to cover in the video because there's a million videos on that, and that it's pretty basic. You basically it's like using caulk or sealant. You fill the holes that you want to fill and let it dry. Then I textured over, which I didn't really cover either because that's basically spray paint. So this is it. Pretty happy. So I just wanted to wrap this video up by saying that I really went into this project without a plan whatsoever. I knew the end result was that I needed to tub the rear so I can clear the bigger tires. How I was going to do it, I had no idea. I originally wanted to do kind of like a squared off box look, which I've seen a lot of people do. But at the same time, like, I wanted to be able to keep the elements out and keep it fairly functioning in terms of a full body rig. I think I accomplished that with the design that I went with. I know it's not everybody's taste. It was probably more work than needed to be done. However, I learned a few things, and I hope you did too. So with that, I'm going to end the video here. Now, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you got anything out of it, please give it a thumbs up. If you like my content and you want to see more, please consider subscribing and hit that little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. Well, that way it'll let you know when I upload a video, which is roughly twice a month. So until then, we'll see you on the next one.